Yesterday we had with us, or at least that was on the phone with me before the show, Steve Weber, our director in the Ukraine. He said the Russians were getting ready to move on the Ukraine. And indeed, that's the story today. The Russian bear is on the prowl, and it could be bringing nuclear weapons with it. The top military commander for NATO is warning that Russia is sending troops into Ukraine, along with tanks and deadly heavy artillery.
Russia denies it, but Moscow has been flexing its military muscles in other parts of the world as well, including near the United States. Caitlin Burke has the story.
Russia appears to be making a move. Tanks, artillery, and troops all being moved into Ukraine, according to General Philip Breedlove, the commander of NATO forces in Europe.
We see forces that are capable of being nuclear that are being moved to Crimea. Whether they are or not, we do not know, but they do have the kind of equipment there that could support that mission if required.
The UN Security Council met for an emergency meeting Wednesday to address the situation in Ukraine. Officials warned that the area is on the verge of returning to serious fighting.
We are deeply concerned over the possibility of a return to full-scale fighting. Alternatively, the conflict may simmer in this way for months, with sporadic low-level battles marked by periods of increased hostilities and further casualties.
Russia denies that it's preparing for renewed military action. They say that Russian volunteers are simply crossing into Ukraine to support pro-Russian separatists. General Breedlove estimates that between 250 to 300 Russian personnel are currently inside Ukraine.
My biggest concern right now is that this force, this capability that is being moved into eastern Ukraine, will be used to more consolidate the edges of this area in order to make it a more contiguous, more easy to control and employ region.
Meanwhile, in a show of force against the West, Russia announced that it will restart long-range bomber patrols from the Arctic Ocean to the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Military analysts say the extended Russian bomber patrols are just another way of displaying the power of the Russian military. In September, Russian strategic bombers near Canada practiced cruise missile strikes on the U.S. And in May, Russian planes flew within 50 miles of the coast of California. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. Our Steve Weber told me yesterday that the ruse that the Russians will be using would be to send KGB people into the Ukraine who would set off explosives and look like that they were the Ukrainian military trying to suppress the separatists. And therefore, that would be the provocation that Putin would need in order to invade. That's what's coming, and so keep your eyes on the news. But this would be a terrible thing, and Obama's got his mind on stuff that's not really important these days, and this is one that Putin knows he's dealing with a weak opponent, and he's going to take every advantage he possibly can find. Well, in other news, the Obama administration may be looking for a new strategy against Syria and ISIS. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, the United States has been trying to defeat ISIS in Iraq and then go after Islamic State fighters in Syria, but that strategy isn't working. And according to sources from CNN, the president has asked his national security team to review U.S. policy towards Syria so that the Syrian rebels don't have to take on ISIS and President Bashar Assad at the same time. Top advisors in the Obama administration have long argued that the current strategy wouldn't work. Well, why would a woman leave her home and family to join the ISIS terrorists? We've learned a shocking number of young women are among the thousands of Westerners headed to the Middle East. Eric Stackelbeck has this look at the women of Jihad.
For months before Shannon Conley's arrest, FBI agents met with her repeatedly. They warned the 19-year-old Muslim convert that her plan to travel to Syria and help ISIS was illegal. Conley, however, had made up her mind. She wanted to leave her suburban Denver home to marry an ISIS fighter she had met online. Agents stopped her at Denver's airport before she could carry out her plan. Yet there are many more like her. Last month, 3 teenage girls, also from suburban Denver, were detained while trying to make their way to Syria. But hundreds of other young women from Western countries have made it to the Islamic State, marrying ISIS fighters and even fighting alongside them.
I have a huge concern regarding the women going back, because that's, again, a part of building a new society. That's the marketing that's going on. And a lot of women here are finding that an attractive option.
Bob Fletcher is the former sheriff of Ramsey County in Minnesota, which includes the city of St. Paul. At least 4 Somali women from St. Paul and neighboring Minneapolis have traveled to Syria to join ISIS in recent months.
While they're recruiting men, they promise them wives when they get there. They need women in their society to keep their fighters content. It's a scary thing, but the women are really being used in a variety of ways once they get there.
In some cases, these women act as much more than mere jihadi brides. A group of British women reportedly leads an all-female Sharia police unit inside the ISIS-controlled Syrian city of Raqqa. These British citizens enforce Islamic dress codes and even reportedly run a brothel where they provide sex slaves to ISIS fighters. So far, most of the ISIS women come from Europe. The numbers include at least 50 British women, 40 from Germany, and some 60 French girls and young women, all leaving their homes to join the Islamic State. The so-called poster girls for this movement are a pair of Austrian teenagers who are believed to be living in Syria and married to ISIS fighters. The girls are reportedly pregnant and want to come home.
Al-Qaeda, extremists, what they call ISIS, Al-Shabaab, I believe for the girls, they're using their element of surprise.
There is a precedent for female terrorists. Dozens of Muslim women from Chechnya and Dagestan have carried out suicide bombings against Russian targets in recent years. But ISIS is taking things to another level by actively recruiting women online. ISIS promises them husbands and a wonderful new life in the caliphate, a place where, ironically enough, women have no rights or freedoms. Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, Washington.
It appears President Obama is closer to taking executive action on illegal immigrants. Fox News reports the president may announce a 10-point immigration plan as soon as next week. President Obama had already pledged to take action on immigration before the end of the year. The plan could allow up to 4.5 million illegal immigrant adults with American-born children to stay in the U.S. Republicans in Congress oppose executive action by the president, with some recommending ways to stop it. Pat?
Well, this is an example of the so-called imperial presidency. We just can't allow this to happen. You know, the president acts like that election did not take place. The election was an overwhelming repudiation of him and his policies. And now we are going to have some polls coming up in just a minute showing how the American people feel in regard to a number of major issues. But in regard to immigration, why start a fight? Why start a fight? Why poison the waters when Mitch McConnell and other Republicans are more than willing to go halfway and to make some kind of accord in order to help the nation? But all Obama thinks of is playing politics, and this is a political gamble. He pushes the Republicans on this. They're not prepared to have comprehensive immigration legislation because you want something that really will be lasting. But he's forcing them to take a position where they'll vote against it. And then he'll go to the Hispanics and say, you see, they're against you. I mean, it's strictly a political ploy. And yet, to think that the president, all he thinks about is partisan politics. By nature, he's a community organizer made on the model of a radical left-winger, and that's what we got. And, you know, the people say, what can we do about it? Well, it's time for Congress to take bold action, but the American people need to understand that you can't always have sweetness and light. There can't always be harmony. Some people have to stand up for principle. John.
Pat, the public favors Republicans in Congress taking charge of policy in Washington rather than President Obama. According to a new Gallup poll, 56% of Americans would rather have Republicans have more influence on the direction of the country, while only 36% prefer the president. Republicans have a 42% favorable approval rating, and Democrats have a 36% favorable rating. The president's approval rating sits at just 39%, with a 56% unfavorable rating. Well, both houses of Congress are finally voting on the Keystone Pipeline. The project got new life on Capitol Hill Wednesday after Senate Democrats abandoned efforts to block the measure in hopes of giving some political cover to Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu. She faces a runoff election next month. The White House says the president is taking a dim view of legislative efforts to force action on the oil pipeline. Landrieu has supported the Keystone Project in the past. If she loses the runoff, Republicans will have a gain of 9 seats from this year's midterm elections. Well, more than a month away from the official start of winter, some parts of the U.S. are already deep in snow. The polar blast has made its way through the heartland, dumping record-breaking snow in some states. Northern Michigan was buried under more than 3 feet of snow. In Denver, temperatures dropped a range of 60 degrees in just 24 hours, causing hundreds of flights to be canceled and havoc on the roads. The Arctic air is now making its way to the East Coast and is expected to linger through the middle of next week. Pat, time to bundle up. Winters come early.
Man, I have a warm coat on. I am ready.
You are.
Wendy, you're from West Virginia.
It's going to be a white Thanksgiving, I think, not just a white Christmas.
Well, you know, when I was a kid, that was normal. I lived in a little town called Lexington, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and it was nothing to have snow on Thanksgiving. I mean, heavy snow.
Yeah.
And there were 2 schools, Virginia Tech, which is it used to be called VPI, and VMI, Virginia Military, and they were 2 rivals, and they played on Thanksgiving Day. So it was a football game played in the snow, and that was standard. Now we think, oh, Thanksgiving
Weather
snow,
is
a big deal.
secular. It goes in cycles, and now we're in another
but
very snowy.
We're not in global warming. Just fix it in your mind, folks. We're in a colder, it'll be colder for the next several decades, then it'll start warming up again.
A big court victory for a Christian ministry challenging Obamacare's contraceptive mandate. A federal judge in Dallas has granted Pastor Chuck Swindoll's Insight for Living Ministries a temporary exemption from fines for not providing employees with certain birth control coverage. Swindoll's ministry considers the use of some contraceptive methods as forms of abortion, which violates their religious convictions. This is one of several similar cases moving through federal courts right now. A Christian school in Anchorage, Alaska says it will not host a wrestling tournament. This comes after school leaders were told they could not pray before the event. The tournament draws athletes from both public and private schools around the state. The Alaska School Activities Association received complaints about the prayers from someone attending the event last year. After being asked to stop praying, the school told the Activities Association it could no longer host the championship. School administrators say they were simply praying for safety and good sportsmanship. Remember, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.